forward, or it'll take you backward.
Thank you. Thank you. Is it time? Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Happy to see you all here. Thank you for coming. My name is Omar Ahmad, and I'm joined here with my colleague, Cher Carney. She's in the audience. And we're both from the University of Iowa. And we are here to share with you details about our project. It's a demonstration grant project called ADS for Rural America. And we are going to be talking about how we're performing automated vehicle testing on rural roadways in Iowa involving mobility impaired populations. So this is just a kind of an outline of our talk, and most of it is really about the project, and I'll share with you the various aspects of it. But before we begin, we would like to share some opening remarks with you from Steve Mortensen from the Federal Transit Administration. Steve is the program manager from the government who's overseeing this project. So Steve, take it away.
Thank you, Omar, and good afternoon, everyone. My apologies that I cannot be with you in person today. I'm Steve Mortensen, a senior ITS engineer with the Federal Transit Administration's Office of Research, Demonstration, and Innovation, and one of the managers of FTA's Transit Bus Automation Research Program. I'm also the FTA project manager for the Automated Driving System for Rural America Demonstration Grant. Today, I'd like to tell you a little about FTA's Transit Bus Automation Research Program and USDOT's Automated Driving Systems Demonstration Grants. But first, I'd like to explain why are we conducting this research. We are conducting this research because the transit industry believes that automation will achieve the following: improve safety, enhance mobility, and improve the quality of life for those with little or no other transportation options, increase transit efficiency and productivity, potentially reduce costs, increase traveler convenience and comfort through improved service frequency, flexibility, and reliability, enable expansion of hours, and increase overall customer satisfaction. In 2018, FTA published a Strategic Transit Automation Research Plan, or STAR Plan for short, that outlines a 5-year research agenda to advance public transportation readiness for automation by conducting enabling research to achieve safe and effective transit automation deployments, identifying and resolving barriers to deployment for transit automation, leveraging technologies from other sectors to move the transit automation industry forward, demonstrating automation technologies in real-world settings, and building awareness to socialize automation for the transit stakeholder community. Thus, the plan includes activities in 3 work areas, which are enabling research, integrated demonstrations, and strategic partnerships. Throughout the timeline, the plan includes stakeholder outreach and knowledge transfer. We have accomplished a great deal since the plan was introduced, including but not limited to the development of policy-related frequently asked questions, a market assessment and business case analysis, guidance documents, a quarterly update on international and domestic pilots, and several demonstrations funded through FTA's Integrated Mobility Innovation and Accelerating Innovative Mobility Initiatives. For more information on the STAR plan, activities accomplished to date, and deliverables produced, please go to www.transit.dot.gov/automation-research. Turning to the Automated Driving Systems Demonstration Grants, the US DOT selected 8 sites in 2019 to test the safe integration of automated driving systems, or ADS, into our nation's on-road transportation system, and to collect and share data with the US DOT and the public for safety analysis and rulemaking. Up until this time, most investments in vehicle automation research, demonstrations, deployments, and commercialization by the private sector had been concentrated in urban areas and focused on light and commercial vehicles. The focus of the ADS demonstration program was to select projects that provide a significant benefit to the public, address market failures and other compelling public needs, support economic vitality, demonstrate complex, highly automated vehicle technologies, SAE automation levels 3 and higher, are diverse collectively with respect to applications in urban, suburban, and rural environments that serve a variety of technology markets, including freight, personal mobility, and yes, public transportation. Test applications for transportation disadvantaged populations, including older adults and individuals with disabilities, and which demonstrate ADS prototypes. 3 of the selected ADS demonstration sites are specific to rural environments, and 3 are transit in nature. The University of Iowa's ADS for Rural America demonstration project is somewhat unique in that it is both set in a rural environment and will include participants, which could provide a model for future rural public transportation. For more information on the ADS demonstration sites, please visit www.transportation.gov/AV/grants. Thank you for your interest in this topic. Now I'd like to turn it back over to Omar and the University of Iowa team to hear about the ADS for Rural America demonstration.
Thank you, Steve. So about 3 years ago, when we wrote the proposal for this demonstration grant, we took a look at the automated vehicle testing that was happening around the country. And the bar graph that you're seeing here is from NHTSA. And it's basically from their A/B testing site that tries to categorize sort of where testing is taking place is on our roadways. And as you can see that there's a large component of street, highway, interstate testing. But what's really missing from this is our rural roadways. And to a large extent, rural roadways up to recently have been well underrepresented in automated vehicle testing and demonstrations. And why is that important? The reason why that's important is because while a smaller segment of the population lives in rural areas, half of the traffic fatalities occur on those same rural roadways. And so if automated vehicles are going to realize their promise of improving safety for everybody, then they need to do it on all different types of roadways. And clearly there would be a huge impact that could be made on rural roadways with these types of technologies. Another thing that we see, and this map here is from the FTA managed funded projects. And as you can see, there's a lot of testing that's taking place in coastal states or in warm weather states. And what we're really seeing here, testing that's missing is from the central states where we see all 4 seasons and particularly severe winter weather. And so another important component of our project was that we wanted to test automated vehicles, not only on rural roadways, but in all different times of the year across all 4 seasons. Finally, in rural areas, we're seeing with rural areas, there's not really a lot of access or any access to public transportation. And what we're seeing here is that America is aging. And in fact, older people are expected to outnumber children by the year 2035. And many older folks choose to live in rural areas for a variety of reasons. And as they age, for them, being mobile, being able to move from one area to another is their freedom, is their independence. And so if we have an automated vehicle service of some kind running in those areas, then they could potentially remain independent and free for a lot longer. And this is also very important because we're seeing a regionalization of services. So things like specialized healthcare, that is only being done at regional centers and not in these rural communities. So being able to get back and forth between rural communities and then to regional centers is very, very important. And this is another component of our project, is to involve the mobility impaired populations. So rural areas, they present a number of very unique challenges that we don't always encounter on other types of roadways, particularly in interstates and urban areas. So on rural roadways, while the average speed of the vehicle that's traveling on those roadways is lower, the speed differential is much higher. And so what you essentially have is vehicles that are traveling 60 miles an hour or sometimes more, sharing the same exact roadway with vehicles that are slow, such as agricultural equipment, or even stop vehicles, such as school buses that stop on the side of the road to pick up kids. And this is a very, very common occurrence in rural Iowa and in other rural areas. And it's not just ag equipment and buses, it's bicycles, pedestrians, horse buggies, animals. These are all things that share the same roadway. In rural areas, on a rural roadway, there are typically many points of entry and exit. So if you think about an interstate has very well-defined points of entry and exit, and everyone's moving in the same direction once you're on that roadway, and everyone is more or less going the same speed. But in a rural roadway, you have vehicles can enter from almost anywhere, and particularly with farm equipment can get on at any point and get off at any point, and you have little or no warning that that's going to happen. Generally, the road surfaces and the conditions are not consistent on the same roadway. So the same roadway may be paved with lane markings, and then all of a sudden you'll come up upon a section that has no lane markings. And you may even find that the roadway that you're on turns into a gravel road. Often in rural areas, you have road curvature, a lot of road curvature that limits your line of sight. So you can come around a corner and literally find that there's a stop vehicle on your path. And a variety of other things that make rural roadways very unique. And so this is the reason why we say that we feel that it's very important to test automated vehicle technologies in these types of areas and to be presented with these types of situations. So the vehicle that we're utilizing for our demonstration grant is built on a 2024 Transit 350 chassis. And I don't know if any of you were here yesterday, but there was a lot of them parked along the street last night. This is a very common vehicle for this type of, this is a very common platform for this type of a vehicle. This vehicle meets the Buy American Act, and it's a mobility friendly vehicle. Our vehicle is always monitored or driven by both a safety driver and a co-pilot. And it's built to support higher levels of automation. I also want to point out, and I think I'll bring this up again, our vehicle is really being run in the context of a demonstration grant, or think of it as a research study. We're not really running this vehicle. It is a vehicle that's used for transporting people, and we will be transporting people with it, but it's not being run like a service like you may expect. it is more of a research setting. The vehicle is ADA compliant, and it's been upfitted to have a wheelchair. And there are about six other seats in the vehicle for passengers. The vehicle has a number of specialized equipment. This equipment supports the automation. So you can see that we pointed out where we've installed GPS, various antennas, high definition cameras, LiDAR systems, Mobileye, which is used for lane tracking. And we also have a weather sensor and long range radars. And I'll explain a little bit why we have all this. Our project is organized into 8 phases of data collection. And prior to the start of phase 1, we've had a fairly long development phase. Initially, our development phase was projected to take 6 months, but because of COVID and because of us honestly underestimating what it would take to do it, that phase has grown to something more like 1 year and 3 months. But I'm pleased to share that we are just about ready to start data collection, and we expect to do so at the beginning of October. Each one of these phases will have 10 drives. We will perform 10 different loops, which I'll explain to you in a little bit. So at the end of the project, we'll have 80 complete data sets. And each phase will take 3 months. So we'll be running data collection for a total of 2 years, in which we'll see all 4 seasons twice. The route that we've designed for our automated vehicle is a 47-mile loop in eastern Iowa, and it goes through 4 communities: Iowa City, Hills, Riverside, and Kelowna. And this route has been intentionally designed and chosen so that we expose the automated vehicle to as many different classes of roadways as possible. Not only do we have the usual interstate and the 2-lane highway, but we have highways with and without shoulders. We have roadways with good lane markings. We have roadways with poor lane markings, and we have unpaved roads as well on our route. As I mentioned, we will drive this route through all 4 seasons and also different times of the day, because I think it's important to understand how well does automation function, not only as you change weather, but also as you change the lighting conditions. And then we expect, like in any real world situation, there will be construction along the route, and it'll be very interesting to see how the vehicle does or does not handle that type of a situation. We will recruit riders from the local communities to be passengers in our vehicle. As I mentioned, mobility is something that is very important to us. And so we will be recruiting older adults, folks with mobility impairments, or folks with visual impairments. And these folks will be recruited from the local communities through which the vehicle will drive through those rural communities. We're very interested in how passengers of an automated vehicle think about automated vehicles, and particularly how they trust or potentially accept being in that vehicle. So we will be presenting them with questionnaires during their ride, both before and after. And the questionnaires will get to issues of trust, reliability, anxiety, safety, and so forth. And we will also ask them to wear a biometric sensor, which we will use to collect temperature, heart rate, and that kind of information about the passengers. And what we hope to do is to utilize that information to potentially even get at some measures of anxiety and how that potentially changes in different types of driving situations, and how that potentially maybe changes or perhaps gets better as their journey continues in that vehicle. The data that we're going to collect a lot of data. And as Steve mentioned earlier in the opening remarks, the goal of these projects is to collect data and to make them publicly available. And so with that in mind, in addition to the questionnaire data that I described to you, we'll be collecting video data. We'll be collecting data from all of those sensors that you're seeing on that vehicle. And the reason why that's important is because when the automated vehicle does something that we don't expect it to do, or it just simply cannot drive itself on a certain roadway in a certain type of a driving scenario, we want to understand why. And so data from these sensors will hopefully at least help us understand what potentially is the issue that's holding things up. As I mentioned, we'll have video data, we'll have forward video data, rear video data, and then we'll also have data of the driver and the passengers as well. This short clip here is a video of the vehicle driving roadways in Iowa. And what you're seeing on the top is an interface that's been developed for the safety driver and for the co-pilot. Our vehicle has both of those folks in it, and their only job is the safe operation of the vehicle. And this display allows them to see essentially what the vehicle is seeing. And so you can see all the different, how it basically identifies all the different vehicles that are around it and other objects that are around it and how it classifies them. We hope that this will enable our safety driver and our co-pilot to better understand what's happening with the vehicle. Communication is a very important part of this project. And we've been communicating with the public throughout every phase of the project. And we are trying to educate them about automated vehicles and inform them about what our project is, why we're doing it. And so when they see our vehicle, which is a fairly conspicuous vehicle, when they see it driving through their town, they understand potentially why that vehicle is there and what we're trying to do. And we hope that as we educate the public and expose them to automated vehicles, that it'll help improve familiarity and comfort with the automated vehicle technologies. We hope to gain trust and acceptance, and that trust and acceptance will come from positive interactions and us being open and transparent about what we're doing. We've had a number of meetings to promote community engagement, and we've even in the initial planning phases, we had reached out to folks at the city and at the regional level. We informed city managers, city engineers, county engineers, and city council members, the supervisors, and law enforcement at both the regional, local, and at the state level about what we were trying to do and what our goals were. And we wanted these communities to know that we were doing this and to have both their support and actually generate some excitement about what this could potentially mean one day. We also had meetings with, so University of Iowa, the research center that we are at, we have a long history in doing automated vehicle research, both on simulators and on roadways. But what we're not really well versed in is on driving a vehicle that's like this through roadways. And so we reached out to paratransit service providers. We reached out to the university bus service. We reached out to social services, and we even spoke to aging specialists and neurologists and ophthalmologists about how to better understand what we can learn from them in order for us to better perform the project that we're trying to do. We took place in several outreach. We took part in several outreach events, and these are events that some of these events have already taken place, such as the Johnson County Fair and parades in the smaller communities like Riverside and Hills. And we will continue to perform outreach as the project continues. When we're at these events, we try to showcase the vehicle if it's available, and the vehicle generates a lot of interest from the public. They come and they talk to us, and we kind of openly explain to them what we're doing, why we're doing this, and why it's important. It also helps generate with the kids. Kids are very excited by technology. And so it's a great way to reach out to kids and potentially engage them as well. We've had several other method of outreach. So we have a quarterly newsletter that's just associated with this project. And if any of you are interested, we also have a website that you can go to sign up for that quarterly newsletter. And then we also do social media updates. We've been reaching out to the industry as well, and we've made presentations not only at conferences like this, but we've made presentations at with the conference that used to be called Automated Vehicle Symposium, now it's called something else. But we've had a lot of exposure to folks both at the government level and at the industry level to share with them what we're about to do. And hopefully some of them will be able to utilize the data that we'll collect one day. Now I want to talk to you about the safety management plan. And the safety management plan was a very important component of this project. The safety of our riders, other road users, and the staff is extremely, extremely important. And so with that in mind, we developed a safety management plan that is made up of 3 parts. And the document includes a description of the safety team that outlines what each person's role is. And it also includes training requirements for the safety team and the procedures that we've put in place to ensure safety. So moving along with the safety management plan, these are key roles that we've described here. So the safety driver, we have a safety driver. It is a well-trained safety driver. And their role is to drive the vehicle and do nothing else. And the safety driver has been exposed to the vehicle and to the automation technologies that's on it so that they can better anticipate unexpected needs or even expected needs when they need to take over. And the safety driver is either driving or monitoring the vehicle at all time, and they're doing nothing else. Next to the safety driver is a co-pilot. And the co-pilot's job is to, once again, monitor the vehicle and especially look at that display that I showed you, of the video that I showed you a little while ago, and make sure that the vehicle is performing the way that they expect it to perform. And the co-pilot is also an excellent way to provide the driver with more situational awareness about what's around them. In addition to that, we have a remote monitor. I apologize, the cloud on the lower left should say remote monitor, not remote operator. So the vehicle has a live cellular link to our facility. And at our facility, we have the camera feeds from the vehicle. They can be observed by a person that's at our facility. So if there's ever a need to provide quick remote assistance, we have the capability to do that. In addition to that, we have one other person. Well, we actually have a staff of people, but in the vehicle, there'll be one person whose sole job will be to interact with the passengers and to ensure their comfort and safety. And these will be the folks that help people climb in and out of the vehicle and make sure that that if they're in a wheelchair, that it's restrained properly. These folks will also collect the questionnaire data and the biometric data that I shared with you earlier. And then finally, we have a staff of people that are responsible for maintaining the vehicle itself and making sure that everything is working on it the way that we would expect it to, and they perform pre and post-drive checks to make sure that everything looks good. Our staff have received a lot of training, and that training spans quite a few things. So as I mentioned, at the University of Iowa, we know automated technologies and we understand automated technologies really well. But what we're not really that experienced in is in driving a vehicle like this or dealing with passengers that are in the vehicle. And so with that in mind, all of us received training from the University Bus Services that runs a large fleet of buses on the University of Iowa campus. And we received classroom training, and that classroom training was similar to what when they train new bus drivers about vehicle maneuvers, about defensive driving, We received training on the loading and unloading of passengers with mobility aids, such as wheelchairs or scooters. And in fact, it was surprisingly difficult to actually properly restrain a wheelchair in any vehicle, because there's so many different types of wheelchairs out there. And you have to have like a really good understanding of how you can safely restrain it to make sure that nothing moves while the vehicle's in operation. We've done a number of practice drives along our route already in preparation for the start of formal data collection. And we've also received training from the technology provider. So our technology provider on this project is Autonomous Stuff. And they have provided a lot of training to both the safety drivers and other research staff on how you engage and disengage the automation, and how you can assess whether things are working the way we expect them to. We've learned best practices for communication between the safety driver and the co-pilot. And then it's really important that not only that we do this training now, but as needed, we do periodic reevaluation and training to make sure that things are being done the way that we said we would do them. And some of that will happen at the beginning and end of each phase. We have 8 phases. We have developed a number of emergency procedures related to fire, weather, and in the unlikely event, a medical need or a crash. These procedures were developed in consultation with the University of Iowa Fleet Services that operates a very, very large fleet of vehicles. And we also got input from rural transit authorities. And then these were also vetted by the University of Iowa risk management folks. So our goal is to make sure that hopefully none of this will ever happen, but if it does, we're ready. And then of course, COVID-19 procedures. So we've been working during the pandemic, and most of us, or a portion of us, came back to work as early as about a year ago. So we've developed a lot of protocols related to how we continue to do research with external participants and maintain safety for everyone involved. And of course, this involves masking, social distancing, proper ventilation, and cleaning protocols. Our project originally had a timeline of 2.5 years. And as I mentioned, due to a variety of reasons, the initial phase has taken a lot longer than we thought it would. And so we are right about at the end of Q3, and we were supposed to have started data collection by now, but we are projecting to start data collection at the start of October. The project will continue for another 2 years, during which we'll go through 8 phases of data collection. And in each phase, we'll do 10 complete drives. And as we collect the data, we will share that data. So with that in mind, we've developed an approach for sharing large amounts of data. So because we're collecting video data, because we're collecting data from all the different sensors that are on the vehicle, the volume of data that we're talking about is just incredible. It's about 210 terabytes. So this is not something that you can copy to a thumb drive and pass it back and forth. And so with that in mind, we have a cloud-based infrastructure at the University of Iowa that has been developed specifically to support data sharing needs for this project. And as data is collected, it will be processed and stored in an index relational database and stored on this cloud server. And then we have a portal that allows you to access that data. And we will maintain that portal throughout the next 2 years and for another 5 years after the project is over. Our portal allows for different types of access. So anytime you're talking about data, you're trying to balance accessibility with data that contains personally identifiable information. And so as I mentioned, we have video data of the people that are our research participants, and that is private data. And if you're going to want access to that data, then you have to agree to get into a data usage agreement with them. And basically what that means is that you're explaining to us how you plan to keep that data safe and why you need the data and how you plan to use it, so that it meets the agreement that we came up with at the beginning of the project when we recruited participants. But you don't have to have, if you don't need that specific data, then there are much easier ways to get at the data. And basically, you can go to the data portal, sign up, ask for an account, and within a couple of days, you'll be given an account credentials. And then after that, there'll be a tiered way to get to the data. We've learned a lot of important things during this project. And even though we haven't yet begun the data collection, there's a lot of things that we can share with you and others around the country about what we've learned so far. So first of all, automated vehicles are extremely complicated, expensive, and fickle. And more equipment means that you're going to have more failures. We've already had lots of problems with our automated vehicle, and through no real fault of anyone. It's just a very complicated and fickle piece of vehicle with many, many different things on it. So when you experience a failure, you're not going to be able to take this type of a vehicle or any automated vehicle to something like a gas station to have it repaired. You have to have access to somebody who's very well trained with these specific types of sensors in order for that repair to take place. If you're going to operate an automated vehicle in any area, but especially in rural areas, you need connectivity, because there's a lot of data that is transferred back and forth between the vehicle, the map that it's using, so on and so forth. And if you have bad connectivity or no connectivity, then some of the redundancy that's there with a high definition map goes away. And once again, your vehicle, that impacts the reliability of the vehicle and how well it performs when it's on those roadways. So with that in mind, we need to think about digital infrastructure or infrastructure to support the operational needs of this type of a vehicle, and across seasons and geographic regions. That's very important. We are all concerned about safety. Everyone here in this room is concerned about safety. And safety can mean many things to many different people. And what we've learned is that automated vehicles are programmed to be safe. Maybe even too safe. And what do I mean by that? So for instance, anytime they sense anything might not be right, they will slow down or stop in very unexpected places. And if you are a human driving a vehicle behind one of these vehicles, you may not expect the vehicle to be going that slow. Furthermore, what we learned is that the automated vehicle cannot drive above a certain speed limit. It doesn't matter what type of a roadway you're on. So currently our vehicle is governed to a max speed of 50 miles an hour. And from the view of the folks that developed the automation software and our technology partner, they didn't see what the problem with that was, because the vehicle was fast enough to travel on an interstate or a highway. But in the real world, if you're on a 2-lane highway in a rural area where there's no passing lanes and you're going 50 miles an hour, which means you're maybe 5 or 10 below the speed limit, you're going to create like a traffic jam of very, very angry people behind you. And so with that in mind, we need to be aware that automated vehicle technologies are still in the process of maturing, and they have a long ways to go. We've been told that hopefully sometime soon, they'll be able to increase the max speed from 50 to 55. That's what I've heard. So this was news to us, and it actually made us completely kind of reevaluate our driving protocols for how we were going to operate this vehicle on roadways in Iowa. There's a lot of marketing hype and buzzwords that cloud our understanding, our common understanding of what automated vehicles are. You may have heard terms like sensor fusion, deep learning, AI, artificial intelligence. What do these things mean? So when you hear these words, you might get the impression that, oh yeah, this technology is so good, it will figure it out. But what I can tell you is that unless the vehicle has been programmed to specifically deal with a certain type of a real world situation, if it hasn't been programmed to do that, it won't be able to figure it out. And so we're in a phase where automated vehicles are slowly driving on our roadways, and there's going to be a very, very long period during which vehicles slowly get better and better and better over time. But if anyone's under the impression that they can get an automated vehicle and just set it out there and expect it to drive itself, regardless of the number of videos that you've seen on YouTube, something like that simply just does not exist today and probably will not be around for quite some time. So we need to develop terms that we can use to better understand what automated vehicles are and what they can do. And so the Society of Automotive Engineers, they have developed the 5 levels of automation. It's a simple system for classifying what the capabilities of your vehicle are. And currently, what you can buy on the marketplace today, if you're buying a light vehicle for personal use, you can buy a level 2 or a level 2.5 vehicle. That's essentially what a Tesla is today. There are some vehicles that are level 3 vehicles, such as a Cadillac with a system called Super Cruise that will be more automated than a level 2 system. But the Super Cruise only works on interstates and only on certain interstates. And if that interstate, for instance, has construction on it, Super Cruise won't work on that interstate at that time period. So what I'm trying to say is that you may think that you're buying a level 3 vehicle, but that level 3 vehicle has a very specific operational design domain. That means it's only level 3 on certain types of roadways and in certain types of conditions. Otherwise, it may be a level 2 vehicle. And those things are not easy to understand for most people. And while I'm talking about, while I'm giving you, sharing an example of a light vehicle with you, much the same, if not less, exists on the heavy side and on the commercial side. Those vehicles are not even where light vehicles are right now. The public has very limited knowledge of automated vehicles, and there's a lot of fear of the unknown, right? And so when we talk about automated vehicles, we should talk about them in the context of automated vehicles being driver aids, not autonomous. Autonomous implies that the vehicle can completely drive itself and that you don't need a human, or the human can potentially fall asleep. That is simply not the case with any vehicle that is available for sale today. There's no vehicles that can drive themselves that well. And so anytime we buy an automated vehicle with some type of an automation system, it should be seen as a driver aid. And ubiquitous self-driving vehicles are a long, long ways away. And my personal opinion is that we're not going to see anything that is ubiquitously able to drive itself on all different types of roadways for quite some time. The one exception could be a situation in which a community decides that they are only going to allow automated vehicles on roadways and nobody else. In that case, I think it is possible much sooner. And in fact, it may be possible now. And so when you see a parking lot shuttle, for instance, that's using a sidewalk, a dedicated sidewalk to transport people from a parking lot to a sports venue, that is an example of what I just described to you. And that type of a thing exists and can work well. But we have to take a lot of measures to make sure that that automated system is not interacting with unexpected things along its path, because it's probably not going to be able to handle that type of a situation. And so for those of you that are in the service industry and you're thinking, again, this is my personal opinion at this time, that you can buy an automated vehicle and it can somehow potentially impact how you do staffing. Less drivers, more drivers. I think we have to take a very sober look at that, because you're going to need drivers that understand automated vehicle technologies and understand them really well so that they can use them effectively. And I can also see how those drivers maybe that one day we may be even able to explore like hours of service or something like that, because they're not driving all the time. Perhaps they're monitoring the vehicle for some of the time. But once again, these things need to be looked at in the context in which we're trying to implement them. And so this, I believe, is my second to the last slide. And, or actually, no, I have one more. But I thought I'd share this with you all. So I've used the word demonstration grant. Steve used the word demonstration grant. What does that mean? And I wanted to talk about that a little bit. So on this chart, I'm trying to differentiate a demonstration from a deployment. I suspect that most of you are on the deployment end. Please, I'm sorry if I'm wrong. But with a demonstration project, demonstration projects can be very aspirational. They can be very big picture, and they require funding, typically to public funding, because they're very aspirational. And what we can hope to get out of a demonstration project is transparency and the documentation. And so in support of that, we plan to document the challenges and opportunities that a demonstration project like ours will generate. Where are the situations in which automated vehicles are working well on rural roadways, and where are they not, right? And when they're not, potentially, why are they not? And if we can identify that, then now at least we have more clear information on where the areas in which we need to improve. And so a very important component of our project is for knowledge transfer to take place. And we really want to bring everyone's understanding of automated vehicles up together. And we will continue to share lessons learned. And I think a very important component of a demonstration project like ours is that I think that we could be identifying business opportunities, because as I said, the demonstration project was publicly funded, right? Because it's very aspirational, very big in scope. A deployment, on the other hand, is very specific, right? You're trying to solve a very specific problem. And that lends itself to being it has to be economically viable. And so it can be a business. So what we're in fact doing with our demonstration project is I think we're creating business opportunities for future deployments. Clearly, as I mentioned, even with things like levels of automation and what an automated vehicle can do and what it can't do, it seems like we need to think about language that we can all use to that better understands, aids the understanding of the features of automated vehicles and how we can talk to each other about them. And so transparency is like a cornerstone of what we're trying to do. And we'll continue to come to conferences and make presentations. And as I mentioned, we have a website, and I'll throw that web address up in a minute. But finally, right now it's me and Cher that are here, but we have an incredible team back at the University of Iowa. And these are the folks that are playing key roles in our project. It's really like a pleasure to work with these folks. But I also want to acknowledge the sponsor, the U.S. Department of Transportation, that provided the funding for this project, and the Federal Transit Administration that are managing the project now. And we continue to have the support of the Iowa DOT. They've been incredible to work with. And then our technology partners are Autonomous Stuff. They're the folks that built the vehicle, and Manley Communications. They're the folks that did the high definition map. So with that, I will end my presentation. That's the website that you can go to if you're interested in the newsletter or any more information about the project. And I'm happy to take your questions.
I understand you've been doing recruitment for people to participate in the drives that you're going to be doing. How's that been going? Do you have the numbers you wanted and the diversity of persons and needs and so forth, or?
Sure, you want to come up here and use the mic so that the remote folks can? Okay.
So recruitment has actually gone extremely well. We just opened it up, and I believe in the first day we had probably about 40 people that had they have to take a survey to see if they meet all the qualifications and things like that. But it's going really well. And as Omar mentioned, we have partners at the University of Iowa hospitals who are helping us recruit people with the vision impairments. And we also have people at the paratransit centers that are helping us recruit people with mobility impairments as well.
Any other questions?
Hi, thanks for the presentation. Given that this is primarily a driver aid and not a fully autonomous situation, when you're going out talking about this, is it kind of selling the project, what are your main kind of talking points in terms of why we're doing? Is it primarily safety related? We think this research can help reduce crashes by X% over however many years.
Yeah, anytime we talk about automated vehicles, we're talking about the impact on safety, a positive impact on safety, a positive impact on enhancing mobility. That's very, very important. But then also, one of the first sectors where there's a clear business case for automated technologies is trucking and commercial and the movement of goods from one place to another, and potentially even the movement of people from one place to another. There's a clear need there. And we talk about how these technologies can help with that one day. We have to be very careful how we talk about these things, because naturally people, as I mentioned, some people are very excited. Some people are very scared. And some of those folks might be scared because it's maybe the fear of the unknown, or maybe they've been led to believe that their job is on the line because of these technologies. And what I can say is like in any industry, changes take place and change is normal, but we're talking about an evolution in these technologies. And so drivers will have to go through perhaps more training to better understand how their semi-automated system is going to work. But again, it's my personal opinion that we're not going to have people losing jobs anytime soon because of automated vehicle technology, such as bus and truck drivers.
Sorry, I'm just very inquisitive. I'm wondering, now you've got a couple years to do all your work, but I'm wondering how easy it is perhaps to take what you've done in the vehicle and slightly alter, for example, a place that's more hilly, a place that has a slightly different environment, or do you have to do a ton of HD mapping? And would it be transferable to move this along to another stop and try to gather more data, or is it one and done kind of thing?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I'm going to answer it a couple of different ways. So one is that anytime you're going to a location where you haven't been before, there are going to be certain geometric things that are very specific to that. And so anything new has to be tested. But in terms of our vehicle being able to operate on another roadway, one thing that we'll clearly need is that we'll need a new HD map. The HD map is very important. It's integral to the operation of that vehicle, because that essentially, humans can look at a road and immediately know where the lane markings are and where their vehicle has to be within those lane markings, right? And even when the lane markings aren't there, we're pretty good at kind of guessing in most cases where the lane markings should be and we position ourselves. Gravel roads are super interesting, right? So gravel roads are narrow, and generally what people choose to do is they choose to drive in the middle of the gravel road. So essentially you're driving in the same lane that if there was a vehicle coming in the opposite direction, they would use that same lane. But when you are about to pass each other, you move over, right, to the edge to allow each other to go by. These are not, I mean, for an automated vehicle to do all these things, it needs a map. It needs something that its eyes, its rules for where it can go, where it can't go. And that map, it's not a one and done ever, because just like as the real world changes, as markings age, as the state comes and puts down new striping, and suddenly where there was a dashed line, now there's a solid line. Well, guess what? Now you got to update your HD map. And so we were somewhat forward thinking in that not only do we pay for the HD map to be built, but we paid to have it updated one time each year with that in mind. But I can't tell you if, whether that's enough or not. We'll find out. And as far as the technology being useful in other areas, so we're utilizing, utilizing a technology partner that built a vehicle, and they're utilizing a I should say an open source automation software called Apollo. Apollo is made by yet another group. And what's happening is that we're utilizing Apollo. We are learning from it, and we're identifying where it has problems, where it's working well. And then we're feeding that data back to the folks that are making Apollo, and they'll make their software better. But it'll be that, so if 2 years from now you want to run an automated demonstration somewhere else, you'll probably have a new version of the software at that time. And Apollo, by the way, is not the only game in town. There are many other folks that are doing the same thing as well.
Next question. All right, well, thank you for your time, Omar.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate it.